Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the IHC Craft Room. This is my very first live, and I'm so glad that you're here. This morning, we're kicking off my Spooky Season Live series with a step-by-step dot painting of this ghost face Halloween sign. I'll be dotting for about 2 hours today, so if you've prepped your base and you want to dot along, grab your paints and we'll do this together. Feel free to say hi or drop questions in the chat. I'll be looking up every so often, and I'll do my best to respond as we go. I'm super excited to get started, so let's jump in. So I picked up these 5-inch wood rounds from Dollarama. I don't even know how long ago, but there was about 5 in the pack, and they are beauties. So we're going to start off with our base. I did 2 coats of paint on this guy using this Lavender Americana Deco Art paint. And then I protected it with 2 thin coats of my Liquitex matte varnish. So we're all set to go. And just so you know how I've set up so that you can see me, I've taped this down using some painter's tape to a little flower pot that I have that's super convenient and helps me avoid touching things I shouldn't. Okay, so let's get started. Our first step is to take our friend Ghostface here and get him ready to transfer over to the wood round. And today I'm going to be using a bunch of household items as my tools, but I do have some traditional dotting tools available in case you're dotting along with them. I'll also show you some alternatives. All right, let's get started. I'm going to flip this guy over and we are going to color around the edges of this image. Move that out of the way. All the way around. And basically what's going to happen is this is going to help us transfer the image onto our wood round that's nicely painted and ready to go. Hi there, Tony. Thank you for joining. Welcome. So if you're just joining us, we are just preparing our image to go onto the background by coloring it in with a chalk pencil. You could also use a regular pencil for this, but since we're using the purple background, I thought the chalk would be easier. And I really do like using chalk. It's easier to remove. And I normally do that using an eraser. I think I've covered this pretty well at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to actually cut this out because that'll make it easier for me to see if it's actually in the center of my circle before I start trying to transfer the image. Awesome. Okay, so I want this to be as close to the middle and center as possible, but if you're new here, you're going to learn very quickly that I do not stand on pomp and circumstance. So if it's not perfect, we move on with life. You know what I mean? Not a big deal. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm going to leave it there. And I'm using the back of a paintbrush, or you could use the top of a dotting tool as well. And all we're going to do is go around and drop my tool, but we're going to just go around and, oh no, this is too floopy. I actually am going to use my dotting tool. That paintbrush is not strong enough. And we're just going to quickly just go with a little bit of like medium pressure, follow the outline of the image. This doesn't have to be perfect, but basically we're just transferring this image to the background so that we can start dotting it. I say that you don't need a lot of pressure, but I'm definitely pressing this down like this guy owes me some money. Like it's a bit aggressive over here, but that's okay. It won't hurt him. Now we can always clean up any times, you know, if you run off the edge a little bit or get a little crazy with your outline, not a big deal. We can always adjust it later. That's the beauty of chalk. And this is a pretty straightforward design. Okay, now we'll get to the eyes. So I was alive and young when this movie came out, when the Scream series came out, and they killed off, oh God, spoiler alert, big time, but this is from the 90s. So if you haven't watched it, you're probably not gonna. When they killed off my girl, Drew Barrymore, I just about keeled over in the theater. Like, what a shock. Never been done before, as far as I know. Okay, let's see how we did with our transfer here. Okay, it could be better, so let's try to fix it. I missed the eye. Now, I've never had this happen to me before. I'm a little nervous, I won't lie. So we'll see if we can get where we need to go. Oh, I didn't draw. Oh, I know what happened. I must not have colored it in. And that's why it's not transferring. Okay. Try to line you up again. All right, let's see. Hopefully I line that up well enough that I don't have to do a lot of dancing around and figuring out my shape. Let's see. All right, that'll do. Very nice. I'm pleased with that. Okay, I hope you can see that. We're gonna go ahead and move on to creating the outline using some black acrylic paint. So I'm using all paint that I got from Dollarama. It's Deco Art Crafters acrylic paint. We're going to start with black, and we're going to work on the outline of our friend here so that we get all of those little dots out of the way and can see the full outline of the project. I'm only going to put a little bit of paint in my palette because we only need a little as we go. So I'm looking for the smallest tool available to me right now. And I'm going to be using this wood skewer. It's a shish kebab skewer. It's a little thicker than a toothpick would be, but you could definitely try a toothpick for this. That would work really well as well. But I have big man hands, so toothpicks are not as convenient to me as a big shish kebab skewer. Or you could use these little tiny dotting tools as well. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to just dip my tool into the paint and start following the lines. Now, I am dotting very close to each other. I'm also dotting pretty quickly. And I'm doing about 4 dots in a row. Now, I'm not going to deny I'm shaking a little bit because I'm nervous. But also, I want to point out that you'll notice that I stop talking when I'm actually dotting. And instead, what I'm doing is I'm exhaling, which you might actually hear me doing, so I apologize. But by doing that, it keeps me steadier. It calms me. It's also very meditative. And you'll notice that even though I am going pretty fast, I'm not running my dots against each other. Instead, I'm just trying to keep a tiny space. And I'm doing 4 dots in a row. Now, they are getting smaller as I go. Of course, the first dot is going to be the biggest because it has the most paint. And every once in a while, I'm going to clean off my dotting tool because you do get a little bit of paint buildup, and that will make that first dot even bigger than what we want. Awesome. So I've never been able to freehand draw. Not one of my skills. But this transfer technique has really allowed me to do so many different designs and projects that I never would be able to do if I had to just rely on my ability to draw freehand. And it really allowed me to become creative when I thought maybe I didn't have that skill set, because I thought it was kind of easy. And that's what got me into dot painting as well, was this idea of, well, I don't really need to know how to do anything but dot. And I can make something cool. I just want to point out that you'll notice that sometimes I'm dotting to the side right onto my palette. And that's just because I feel like I get a little too much paint sometimes. And to get rid of that massive big dot, I'll put it on my palette instead and then transfer over to our design. So you're going to notice these dots are not the same size. Some of my gaps are bigger, some are smaller. And because I'm talking and I'm nervous and I'm rushing a little, it's entirely possible that I will eventually run a couple together. I think I might have with the last two I just put down. So we'll see if they turn into a blob. I don't actually know how long it's going to take me to dot this. But my assumption is that this will be done over more than one live. I'll be doing a part 2 to complete this shape. Now, it's up to you if you like to rotate the projects you work on. I do. I find that over time, just like everything else in life, you have a dominant side and a dominant way of doing things, and it's easier. So why not? There are times to challenge yourselves and other times not so much. Let's take it easy today. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so we're getting far here. Doing really well. So you'll see, I'm sure you've noticed by now, if you're new to dotting and you haven't really done this before, this is why it's so cool. It's so zen, man. Like, you're just so chill. I just sounded like a surfer dude, but it's totally true. It's just one of those meditative things you can do to help center yourself. And then you end up with like a fun, cool project in the end as well, which I think is a lot of fun. So I started dot painting, I want to say it was 2019, because I just stumbled across an artist in my feed and I was like so intrigued by making art out of dots. I was like blown away that somebody who was not able to draw like me could maybe make something beautiful anyway. I was like, get out of here. Like, I'm totes in, like, I want to learn more about it. And back then, you know, things weren't the same as they are now, that you can just sneeze and find 15 dot artists that will blow your hair back in a big way. Back then, there was only a handful of people really doing this, and I learned so much from them. Okay, so we've done our full outline. Now let's move on to the eyes. So I'm going to outline the eyes in black as the main outline. Black is going to be the outline for everything, and then we'll fill in the white later. So let's go ahead and do that. So I definitely could have done a better job with my stenciling, but even still, you can see that even with shaking and getting it wrong and not coloring in the spots I should, I still ended up with a very usable outline here. And if you are just joining us or you're watching this after the live has been completed, please check out the downloadable link where you can get this image and then you can dot along with me, whether it's right now or next week or next month or next year. You'll be able to use that downloadable. Awesome. Let's do this eye now. Now, this sign or this 5-inch round that we're working on today, I'm using it for another project. So we're actually preparing this for a wreath, but you could totally turn this into a magnet or like just a piece of Halloween decor that you prop up somewhere in your house, or, you know, maybe you might have a little easel or a decorative shelf that you want to show off your cool decor. This would be a really fun little thing to kind of have peeking out. That looks great. Okay. I'm getting a little bit of a numbness in my hands. This is very, very common for me. So bear with me. You are going to see this happening to me a lot. That is what we like to call carpal tunnel. Okay. Oh, I think I just ran my dots together there. We'll see. Okay. Wunderbar. Let's get this guy's mouth done. Another thing that I remember a lot when I think of these ghost face images, again, this was, I think, in the 90s. There was this whole like commercial campaign where people were wearing these masks and they'd answer the phone and they'd say, "What's up? What's up?" It was incredibly annoying, but super funny. And I was like, I don't know what year it was, but I was definitely a teenager. So, you know, annoying is hella funny when you're a teenager. So I just remember being in school and everybody was doing that. But yeah, that's definitely a ghost face memory for you. Okay, so we're doing really well. I've got most of the outline done here. Okay, so something I want to point out about when you're doing an outline like this and you start to end up near the end of something. So let's start working on the outline of the face and I'll explain what I mean. When you're working on the outline of something and you're about to finish it, spacing is a big deal. And I am very hit or miss with my spacing. Sometimes I feel like I could be a computer. My spacing is so amazing. And other times it's like a toddler came in and threw up on the table and then flipped it and said, "Here, there, put your spacing there, lady." It's just no bueno. So I couldn't tell you what the trick is other than to pay attention as you're getting closer to the edge of or the end of your dotting cycle, wherever you're going to complete that image or that line or circle or whatever it is, and plan ahead for it. Don't just be like, "Oh man, I didn't leave enough for that." So I'm going to be wiping off the chalk lines once this outline dries. Now, usually, if I wasn't doing a live, I'd probably walk away and get distracted by something, or I'd play on my phone for 5 or 10 minutes and make sure that everything is dry. Because at this point, okay, we're obviously right here, but everything else that I've done is dry. So it won't take long for us to get to the point where I can erase these lines. And I would prefer that than to go further, leaving the lines in place, because they do end up being distracting. So we are going to try to do that. I'll try to help it dry as quick as possible so that we can erase our lines and not damage what we've done. which is another good reason to breathe out when you're dotting, because it will, you know, kind of dry your dots a bit. So yeah, like I was saying, we're going to be making a wreath using this ghost face sign. I'm really excited about that. Halloween's just around the corner. And who doesn't love a little ghost face at Halloween? Okay, so here's the spot I'm talking about. We're coming up on the end now. And this is the kind of place where you really want to pay attention to your spacing. What's happening? How much room do you have? How many dots do you think you can fit in there? And are you worried that it's going to be in a spot that's going to be super noticeable if you have a gap? I think here would be really noticeable. So to avoid the gap happening there, I'm actually going to go back and dot from there. And now I've moved it here. Okay, so that's better. And now we're going to finish this off. Okay, boom, did it. I don't know why, machine today. Okay, so that's our outline. We are ready to start filling things in. I'm not comfortable erasing anything that I just dotted around the face, but I could definitely do the side. So let's do that as calmly and hopefully not spazzy as possible. Actually, I'm not going to do that because I can totally see that going into the paint. So we're going to leave the outline and I will erase it at the end and just live with it. Okay. So the next step that we are going to be going into is filling in all of the black with multiple sizes of dots. That's going to be our next step here. All of these big guys. So I like to go in a specific order when it comes to filling in dots in these types of images. And that order is real simple, biggest to smallest. And then in the end, we'll go back in with that, you know, that skewer and make sure that we get all of the little nooks and crannies so that when you look at this image, you really see that ghost face and you almost don't even see the dots anymore. Okay, so we're going to use, these are the items I'm using today as household items. This was a paintbrush, but its head it decapitated itself at the beginning of this. Don't be so dramatical, yellow. Okay. Not going to use my chalk pencil. And this is way too big of an end for this project, in my opinion. So you're off. Sorry, number 2 pencil. So I'm going to be actually living with these 3 and my little wood skewer. I think they're a really good size. I would say they're comparable to like my 3mm. Okay, that's a bit bigger than that. That's probably more like a 4mm. That's probably like the 3mm. And this little guy is probably closer to like 1.25, the tops of the balls there, or even a 2. Yeah. Okay, so if you're using dotting tools, that's a little guideline for you about what we're going to be doing next. And I'm going to start off with the big green paintbrush first. All right. So we're just going to be strategic. Where do you want an open space for there to be a big black dot? That's where you should put it. You'll notice I'm going in 3s because every time you lay down a dot, it's going to get smaller in size. So to not make it look very uniform, we're going to put a little here, a little there. Now, always keep in mind what color is supposed to be where. Remember that the mask is white, but the outline of the mask is not. It's black. So we got to be careful about that. This actual like ghost face is going to come together pretty fast. It's the trim that will take a bit longer. But I really like adding trims to pieces like this for a couple of reasons. One reason is that I feel like it really completes it. It really gives it that polished finish. But the second reason is that it offers you an opportunity to really practice your dots when you have all those repetitive things to do over and over again. Okay, I don't feel comfortable using this in any of these little, I don't know what that is, his scarf, whatever. So I'm going to put a couple, not even in the eyes or the nose, don't trust that, but a couple in the mouth. Just like that. Maybe one more right there. Okay, great. And that's all she wrote for my green paintbrush. I think you can go recline for the rest of the day, chill, relax, do your thing. And we are going to move on to the yellow paintbrush that's a bit smaller. Not by a lot, but a bit. Now, there's a couple things to remember when you're dotting and that you can practice to get used to. One is the amount of paint you put on your tool will absolutely impact how big the dot will be that you can lay down. The other thing is how much of your dotting tool you allow to touch the surface of your project. Now, when I was learning dot painting, I saw a lot of people who would talk about you don't touch the dotting tool to the surface. You let the paint attach itself to the surface. It's very philosophical. And I'm like, man, I'm going to touch my tool to the surface because it's going to make a dot no matter what. So, you know, if you want to try that whole, you know, be one with the paint and the surface and whatnot, do your thing. But there is nothing wrong with having your dotting tool touch the surface. Just keep in mind that the more paint that's on your tool and the more of your surface of your dotting tool that you touch, the more and the larger your dot will become. Okay, I think that's as much as I can do with this one. We are moving on to the little blue dude. Okay, so these are all paintbrushes that I got at the dollar store. In case anybody was wondering where most of my paycheck goes, you can talk to our friends at Dollarama and Dollar Tree. And feel free to send your condolences to my husband about all the money I give them, because it's not going to stop. The beauty of the way the dollar stores have evolved over time is that for people like me, it's a fun afternoon to be able to walk up and down the crafting aisle and find new cool things. They actually have a lot of little project things. So you can see that this dot or this paintbrush is giving me smaller dots, but they're still not teeny tiny dots. So we're still filling in, you know, this is where we're going to go into the Ghost Man scarf and get those bigger dots in there. Yeah, the other great thing about Dollar Tree and Dollarama is they've really upped their sign game. Like their decorative signs for Christmas and Easter and even Canada Day. Man, those Canada Day signs really blew my hair back this year. I was super impressed. Like there was next to nothing when I first started making wreaths. So it's really fun to see that they're starting to recognize that the crafting community wants, you know, really cool things that they can use to be creative with that aren't going to break the bank. Like this project is, I don't even know how much this would cost. Less than $3 to make. The rounds were $1.25. The paint, that's it. Bob's your uncle. And I mean, if you already have paint, then you're laughing, right? All right. We're doing really well. So another thing to always consider when you are dot painting is where are you resting your hands? If you're resting your hands. Now, some people have some mad skills and they can hover. I'm not one of those people. I don't have the hover skills. I am a throw yourself on the floor like a beached whale kind of person instead. So definitely not elegant. So you can see I'm resting my pinky is always somewhere to brace myself, whether it's on the edge or it's on the surface or something. This hand is more of a habit, really. and to keep things a little bit steady, because, you know, I am on a surface that I put a little painter's tape, but painter's tape is not Gorilla Glue, right? So I don't want this to, my weight of my hand to flop it off of the screen. That is something I would do, just FYI. I'm really good at being clumsy. But I definitely am not somebody who hovers my hand. I rest my hand whenever I can. Okay, we're doing really well. We're about a half an hour in here. And we've got a good portion of our ghost face dude. He is formulating right before our very eyes, which kind of sounds gross, but I didn't mean it to. Okay. I kind of gave him nostrils by doing that. So let's get into these nooks and crannies a bit over here. That's good. All of that chalk is going to get erased when this is nice and dry. So we won't even see it anymore. Okay, I'm no longer comfortable using this tool. I think we've reached the point where I'm going to start accidentally overlapping dots, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm just going to fill in the last couple spots that I think would benefit from a bigger dot. Yeah, I think that's all. I think we're good there. So I'm just going to clean off my paintbrush here. All right. So we are now back to our friend, the shish kebab skewer. Or again, you could use a toothpick. The toothpick is even finer than that one. So I may even end up going in with the toothpick later too. So we'll see. So, okay. What we're going to do now is fill in all of the gaps so that, yes, you'll see some purple, but not much. Now, keep in mind that because we're doing that and these dots are still wet, there is always the possibility that if you touch something, you'll turn it into a blob. So the name of the game is stay away from the other dots and focus on purple spots. And never forget that this whole area is white because we haven't even started our white yet. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to go onto the scarves first. Now, when I'm doing this part and you're really trying to fill in gaps, so I'm not going to do just one dot. I'm going to do like 4 or 5 dots, and I'm going to jump around. Anywhere I see a purple spot, if there's enough space for a big dot, I'll pop a big dot in there. If there's not enough space, I'm going to wait until I've dotted 2 or 3 times because then my dot will be smaller. Now, I want to fill in a couple of little gaps in there. So I'm going to take my toothpick and go right in there. So I'm not somebody with 20/20 vision. I use like those reader glasses from the dollar store because remember, they take all my money at the dollar store. Okay, Mary, don't sing. Nobody needs to hear that. Okay. Let's go on to the next part of this little, I don't know, is it a scarf? It's part of his outfit of horror. His horror fit, if you will. Yeah. Okay. That's great. Yeah, you know what? This combo of the shish kebab skewer and the toothpick is a good combo. I just got to be careful because I've got big fingers. And if I'm not careful, I'll end up flinging this toothpick across the room. So I brought up the reason I'm wearing these glasses because these are some hella small dots I'm putting in here. Like they're very, very small. And I'm really, really trying to just fill in that purple so that you really don't even see the purple. It just blends into the background because there's just so many black dots. Okay, that's great. Pleased with that. And see, you can see a big difference, in my opinion, between these two guys that I've just filled in with little dots and this one and that one and just the rest of this. So we're going to now get to that point where there's not going to be enough real estate for the dots. And we're going to be probably primarily in the toothpick era. I'm going to be in my toothpick era. I wonder if Tay-Tay had a toothpick era. I don't think so. Pretty sure no. Okay, so that's all I can fit in there. We're going to move on to toothpick. See, I don't know if you noticed that right away. Just pinky and then dot. That pinky really does stabilize like everything because I don't have to worry that my hand is going to shake and bounce the... Oh, did I get myself dirty? No. Good girl. Okay. Let's do this last one here. Oh, I almost double. Okay. That's all for that one. I need a toothpick for this. Okay. So what happens if you dot over a dot? Well, if the dot is already wet and you're dotting on it with a fresh dot, they're going to turn into a blob. It's pretty much your only... There's no other way around it. That's what's going to happen. But if the first dot is dry or mostly dry, then all that's going to happen is you're going to have an overlapping dot, which is no big deal. Most times people won't even see them. You're always your own worst critic, right? Usually when I'm crafting, specifically when I'm dot painting in particular, actually I do it with all crafting. I listen to podcasts, or am I the a-hole? TikTok reels, or I listen to Harry Potter audiobooks. But I generally almost always have something playing or that I'm listening to or singing along with because, you know, music makes the people come together. Just ask Madonna. Even the bourgeoisie. And unfortunately, I can't play any music while I'm doing this. So you get to just hear me yap. Yippity yap like the Mary I am. Okay, we are getting places here. So I do go basically section by section, but at the same time, especially as the area gets more and more filled with dots, I'm kind of like just jumping from area to area where I can tuck a little dot in without worrying that I'm going to create a blob by touching a wet dot or an overlap by touching a dry dot. Again, I don't really care about the overlaps personally. I don't even care about the blobs. Like, to me, that's what makes dot painting so cool, is that it's not perfect. I mean, don't get me wrong. You should look online if you haven't already. There are some phenomenal dot painting artists out there. Like some real talented people that create some really amazing stuff. And if it becomes your passion and you can dedicate the time to really grow your skills as a dot artist, really the sky is the limit. You can make pretty much anything on any surface, as long as you learn what you need to learn about how to work with that material, that surface, or how to seal it, how to make it last. Oh, I just touched the edge of my... And here comes my friend, the Q-tips. Bueno. Okay. Anyway, you can definitely find some incredibly talented artists who have clearly dedicated hours and hours to really honing their skills on this artistic path. But spoiler alert, you could also be like me and not hone your skills, but just enjoy creating the things you create. I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm not trying to be amazing. I am trying to lower my blood pressure by doing things that are meditative and Zen-like, which, I mean, come on, dot painting is definitely. And this transfer technique makes me be able to make a million little things I'd never be able to. If you go check out my YouTube channel, you'll see that I made a dot painted Hedwig owl rock for Harry Potter's birthday, because Harry Potter. And I also did a series of Wicked rocks when Wicked, the musical, came out in theaters with Ariana Grande Piccolina. Where I used this transfer technique to let me make the bubble crown and the Wicked Witch's hat, and it was so much fun. Because, in case you guys don't know, this is my idea of a good time. So if you're not having a good time, oh boy, I don't know what to tell you, because I'm having a great time. Okay, so I'm pretty pleased with this area right here. I'm gonna walk away and turn mine eyes in other directions. And we're gonna let that section kind of dry up and then come back to it a little later. But you can see it's really starting to come together. So Tony's asking, can you fix it if it comes like that? Like, do you mean if the two dots come together and become a blob? No, you really can't fix that if you end up in a blob situation. But, I mean, it's not the end of the world. A little blob never hurt anybody. I mean, unless you watch the movie The Blob. That's not something you really want to do when we're talking about blobs. Okay. I think I'm going to strictly stick with my toothpick now because it's still the thinnest of the tools. I'm actually going to get rid of this one and start a new one because it's getting a little gross. Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely going to stick with the toothpick because it's really, really tiny. And I can just get into all those little spots. All those little spots. If you're just joining us, we are working on this ghost face sign as part of the Spooky Live series that's kicking off today. Now, if you don't want to make this for a wreath sign the way I am, I would recommend you add some magnets to the back of this, and you can stick it to your refrigerator or something magnetic. Or you can use it as a little piece of decor on your bookshelf or somewhere in your house. It's just a really cute way to kick off spooky season. Now, of course, if you wanted to do a project like this with your kids, you're not expecting to have this level of fine motor skill or patience. You know, trying an image that's a little bit larger, that has bigger areas to work on, then you can just use larger dotting tools and use bigger dots and don't worry about these little teeny tiny guys. And you'll make yourself a wonderful item regardless. All right, we're doing really well. The thing I really like about dot painting outside of the ease and that repetitive, meditative aspect. Oh, these are getting messy. What's wrong with you, toothpick? Now, I made a couple of messy dots, and you have a couple options. Option one is to use a Q-tip and try to get in there and clean them out. I'm sure not going to do that because it will also take out a few of the other dots that I don't want to remove. I don't think that they matter. I don't think anyone is going to notice them. I can't even see them once I look away and look back quickly. So again, we come back to I don't care if it's perfect. I care that I like it and that it's fun. And I have to stop saying care like that because that's really old and played out, I'm sure. All right. Okay, so we're just keep it moving. the other thing I really loved about dot painting from the beginning was the fact that you don't need dotting tools. You could legit do this using anything, which, in case you needed some proof, let's have a look at all the tools I've been using today. And I mean, I use the back of paintbrushes because I have a lot of them, and they really do come in lots of different shapes and sizes. But if you don't have any paintbrushes handy, check out the tops of some pen caps, mechanical pencils, actual pencils. Like, not for anything, if you sharpen this really, really well, you could get this to be any size tool you want it to be. So there's like, the sky really is the limit in terms of, oh, you don't want to invest money in buying dotting tools? Not a big problem. You got a toothpick on hand? Look at what we're getting done today. So nothing to be worried about. And I really loved that because I didn't want to commit to buying dotting tools. Not that they're expensive, FYI, they're not. Like that pack that I showed you earlier at the top of this live, I think they're maybe $12, possibly 15. The only downside is you really can't get them at the dollar store. It's one of the few things you can't get at the dollar store. That's something that I had to get from like an Amazon or an Etsy seller or something like that. I'm sure you could find. But something you could get at the dollar store that would be useful and a possible option for tools, and I happen to have this handy, shockingly, is knitting needles, because they also have different sized ends that would be super useful for this purpose. So keep that in mind. These were $2.50. Lord knows how long ago I bought them. At this point, Dollarama is a lot more expensive than it used to be. So they might be closer to $5 these days, but that would give you a lot of size options, and it's a multidisciplinary tool because you can use it to knit and you can use it to dot. I am very pleased with that. I think that's great. It looks great. I'm happy with the outline. I'm happy with all of the dots that we filled in. I'm going to leave the outside now, and we're going to let it dry really well. And then we'll go back in a little later and maybe grab a couple more dots in a couple of places that I could cover up that purple a little more. But for now, let's move on to the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, and then we'll switch over to white. Now, let's have a look at the paint. I've been dotting for a while now, and, you know, paint starts to dry and get a little not so nice. So I'm going to actually add just a drop of fresh paint on top. You really don't need a lot of paint to dot paint. You could buy one of these bottles and it'll last you for, I don't even know, a really, really long time. A really, really long time. Okay, so let's move on to the eyes. I can switch back to my shish kebab skewer for that. You don't even realize how much this is calming you when it's happening. But I don't know if you guys noticed it at the beginning. My hands were legit shaking, but I'm okay now. I'm all right. No more shaking. But that really does come from a lot of deep breathing that's been happening over here. And a lot of repetitive meditating dotting. Okay. I am concerned that if I do anything else, I'm going to overlap or make a blop. So let's move on to this guy. And we'll go back after when those dots have dried a little bit. So that is definitely a technique that I use all the live long day, which is, you know, dot your dots and then move on and come back once they've dried. I mean, again, amazing dot artists out there. I've seen them and they work real fast with, everything's wet all the time and they never make that mistake of blurring them together or blobbing it out. And, awesome. I'm impressed. I am deeply and truly impressed, but I am also 100% sure that is not going to be me. So I use this technique of letting things dry and then come back later when you don't have to worry about all those extra concerns and you can add in some more dots. I don't like the shape of that dot, so I'm going to add another bit of, okay. All right, that eyeball is done. Again, for now, we'll go back later. Oh, I just totally broke my, okay. Pardon me, I am a warrior. And don't know my own strengths. Okay, this side's all right. Okay, let's move on to, oh, see, I made a blob. Do you see the blob? I made a blob right there. Now, I don't have a lot of wet dots around it, and I could wipe it off, but I'm actually going to leave it because this is going to be my proof that you don't necessarily need to clean up every mistake because you might not even notice it in the end result. So here it is right here. I'm just drawing your attention to it so that we can see if it comes back into our do I care moments later. And for now, we're going to move on to this teeny tiny nose. Okay, wonderful. Now let's go move on to the mouth. Okay, we're approaching the 1 hour mark. So we're about halfway through our session for today. And we're getting quite a lot accomplished. So I'm really pleased with what we've covered in an hour. This is a lot, which is fantastic. But where we're really going to be spending most of our time later will be the trim. And perhaps we'll do that as a second part of this live. We'll see. We'll see. Okay. That's all I am comfortable doing with this size. Let's move on to... So I don't think we're going to be using... Oh, no, I need it for the white. Oh, no, I'm going to use a different one for the white. I don't want black to mess my white. Yes, Tony, I do have patience. Not for everything, though. I'm sure you could ask my dad, and he'll tell you I'm the most impatient person he knows. But, yeah, you do have to have patience to do dot painting. But I do think that, generally speaking, humans tend to have patience for the things that interest them and have the least amount of patience for the things that don't. So I find this fun. I find it relaxing. I love that I can use my, what I thought was non-existent creativity in a really creative way. And it's not expensive because who has money to buy, really expensive things all the time? Definitely not me. Okay. We are doing really well here. Okay. I would say I'm really happy with that. I'm going to go back and fill in a little bit now that the outlines have dried and even these bigger dots have dried now. Yeah, that's great. We're going to go fill in a little bit more. I'm just going to do a quick pass, one all over, and then we will move on to the white. wonder if you can hear my chair creaking. Not a lot, because we definitely did a good job on the first pass. Nothing there, nothing there. Just if anything like jumps at you, like, oh, there's a big purple spot we could fill. Because we really want that black to dominate. Which is another reason why I don't particularly care if I overlap a dot or create a blob dot. It's not a big deal. There's so many other things in life to stress over. Blob dots are not on my agenda. What's that saying? Not on my bingo card. I miss bingo. I should go to bingo. Okay. Very good. Now, of course, you don't need to be this meticulous. You could leave lots of purple. I think you'll still really see the design very well. But, you know, if you're new here, oh, welcome. And also, FYI, I'm a little extra. I don't really see. I need a sip of water. Okay. Okay. I would say that we're as done as we can be. I'm very pleased with that. That came out great. Now let's move on to white. I'm going to be using, again, Deco Art Crafters acrylic paint in white. And I'm going to swap out my tool. I've got a fresh one. Oh boy, that was very aggressive. Okay, just a little bit of white paint. This is like the smallest of the area. All right, we're going to start with, again, we're going to go back to the big dots. Now, I don't have a lot of white room, so let me see. Is this dry? Can I? We are very close to being fully dry. I think I could actually erase this. I only see a couple of dots that are kind of wet. Ugh, I don't want to run the risk though, so let's wait. Okay, so there's only room for a few big dots. So we're going to be really choosy. About where we're going to put them, because we got to be careful. Okay, that's it for that. I'm going to flip my rag so that I don't mix my paint. Okay. I think we can do this guy. I'm going to put quite a lot of paint on it so that it's a bit of a thicker dot than okay, so this is where you really have to take your time. Because it's very easy to get excited and then accidentally dot too close. And that's when you get your blobs happening. And these blobs will be noticeable because the white is such a stark contrast to the purple and the black that you'll definitely notice a blob. Doesn't mean it won't happen, but we're trying to avoid it if possible. Okay. I really don't think I can make any bigger dots. So that's that. Let's move on to the shish kebab skewer. Sorry, yellow. You're too chunky. You're too chunky. Okay. So when I'm nervous about putting down a dot because I'm a little like, ooh, is this tool too big? Am I going to get a really big dot? Like, I don't know. There's times where I'll, just be like, no, let's veer on the side of caution and I just won't place the dot. But there's other times where what I do instead is instead of laying my dotting tool down, with all of the paint, I do a very small dip so that I'm not putting the whole surface of my dotting tool down. I'm just barely letting it touch, which I guess is what those original dot painters were trying to say about not touching your dotting tool, but to the surface, but whatever. Anyway, by not putting my tool completely down, I'm also able to adjust the size of my dot. So I'm sure you're noticing that I'm not always confident about where I'm going to put the next dot. I'm just kind of like looking around at different spots where I could naturally put it. And if it's not going to work in the spot where I'm working, then we'll go to a different section of the design. Okay, so I'm just walking the dots straight down the side of this because this is just such a small spot. I'm not going to be able to fit much in terms of dots in here. I'll go in again after these dry up a bit. And we'll add a few more using the toothpick just so that there's more. But now you can already see that outline just doing that one row down the side, turn this into a mask, just like that. Dude, where are you going? Don't leave. We are having such good time. Okay. Okay, I think it's time to move on to the toothpick. I don't see any other places where I'm comfortable and confident to use this. So we're going to move on. Okay, which is the most dry? Not really any of it. So we're going to go section by section. I'm going to start on the forehead. Oh boy, I'm getting a little paintbrush. Okay, I don't know why this isn't working well, but this toothpick is like, no, I am not meant for painting. I shall not be one of your Arturos. There we go. Wow, that is the tiniest of the tiny dots. It's quite amazing what, in my opinion, I mean, you might not think the same, but these little dots, they really make the most huge impact and you would never realize it. But the fact that they kind of just build that background and push that purple backwards, because now the white dots are taking and trying to make themselves the background. It's really cool, in my opinion. I don't know whose other opinion it could be. I'm the only one speaking. Okay. Very good. I think I need a little bit more white paint. I might have underpoured. It's really easy to get caught up in doing this and just lose all track of time. Especially if you have something cool to listen to, as opposed to just listening to me talk. But, you know, maybe you think listening to me talk is super cool. In which case, yay. Okay. Here we go. And this can make the tiniest little dots. Awesome. Okay, we're doing really well. We've got quite a lot of this already done. And filling in using toothpicks is really doing the job here, because I'm getting that really tiny, tiny dot that's filling in all the background, which is awesome. Okay, that spot is going to be a little tricky, so we'll go back to that later, because everything's dry around there now, so we'll be able to focus on that. But I want, right now, this is upside down to me, which is fine when I'm just filling in certain things, but when I want to see the outline really well, I want it to face me. So we'll flip this around in a second. Okay, we're doing really well here. Wild and crazy times at the IHC craft room. Super duper chill. So the reason I varnished the background here was in case I did want to clean up a mistake or a dot that went a little rogue. But at this point, if you've been watching, you know, I don't really consider mistakes. Not in dot painting. I consider them part of the design. So it's pretty rare for me to clean something up that has gone wrong. Oh yeah. We are talking now. Okay, so I'm going to just focus down here on the jawline a little bit because it's such a tight spot. These extra white dots are going to make all the difference of really, okay, no, I don't want you to be too thick. Bringing some definition to that spot and just really making that bottom of the mask of the jawline show. Getting a little cramp in my hand again. All right. Okay. I'm very pleased with that. I would say we are pretty much done that. Let's move on to our trim. I feel like we've got a good I saw a spot that's screaming at me. Betty, put a dot here. Okay. Very good. I would say we're done, but clearly I keep putting dots. But that's just because I'm extra, like we said. Okay, let's move on to the trim on the outside. We're about an hour and 20 minutes in. We actually have a chance of getting this all done in one sitting. I'm kind of surprised, I gotta say. All right, so for the trim, we're going to be using one dotting tool for the main dots all the way around. And then I'm going to be using an apple green contrast color, but you don't have to. You could just put white dots instead if that's, if you don't have the green color. That's perfectly all right. It's going to pop just as much. So we want a dot that's about that size. I'm thinking it's this guy. So let's see. First of all, let's see what my paint's like right now because I've had it here for a bit. And it can get a little gross. Oh, and it did get gross. That's nice. Let's see. All right, great. Okay, let's move this guy out of the way. So, once again, remember to not start in a spot where you can see, where you would get your attention drawn to it right away. So for me, when I'm starting a trim, I try not to start in one of those places that would draw your eye. So I'm going to start on the side or somewhere in the middle of a side so that if my dot is a little wonky or it takes me a few dots to get to the size I want, then it's not going to be a big deal. Oh yeah, this is the right size tool for sure. Okay. I'm going to stop here and point out a couple of things. Number one, you need to have a tiny bit of that trim of the purple in the edge. You don't want your dot right at the edge of the wood round because we do want the spot so that we can drop those little dots in afterwards, okay? So we're leaving a tiny bit of that purple around the trim. And you'll also notice that I'm giving myself a decent amount of space between dots. That one's a little small. Okay, so for this, I'm definitely exhaling when I'm dropping the dot. And I'm being extra careful about where my hand is. Because for now, I don't have to worry about touching anything. But soon enough, we're going to reach the point where there's going to be more trim done than not done, and I won't be able to rest my hand the way I am right now. So we'll see how we do when we get there. So I'm really exhaling on every single dot. And if you look at them, they're not equal. They're not even. They're all slightly different in size. And guess what? I grew up in the 80s where we were taught to be unique little snowflakes. So I'm cool with them not being uniform. Variety is the spice of life, after all. But again, I want to make sure that we're leaving a decent sized gap so that we're not worried about our dots running into each other. Okay, that was a little close. Right when I said it, eh? Man. Typical Mary. Don't do this. And then I'm going to do it immediately after. And trying to keep a little bit of real estate on the edge of the dot so that we got that little bit of purple trim, which will leave us enough room in that gap between the dots to add in that green dot later. The thing I always notice about these trims, because I do like doing trims like this, I really feel like it's kind of like a dovetail finish to a ribbon for me. If you watch any of my wreath making videos and you see me make a bow or I use anything ribbon related, I'm always doing like a dovetail end on my ribbons because I just love the way it looks. I feel like it's just such a nice finish. And this is a perfect example of a similar finishing movement that to me just really puts the period on the end of the sentence. Ooh. Okay, so here's another thing I have to be careful about. Because my round is sitting on a flower pot that is a little smaller than it, when I rest my hand on the edge, I am lifting it. So again, that's what this hand is for. This hand is going to try to keep the round in place without touching the dots. Okay, we're getting into tricky territory now. Which is another good reason to leave that bit of purple trim on the outside of the dot, because now when my finger is touching the edge, I'm not as worried. I'm still a little worried, but I'm not as worried that my finger is going to touch the dot and screw up my blob. Screw up my perfect little dot. So you'll notice that at times I will tap my dotting tool more than once. Rather than just drop and get one dot, I will add a little bit more paint by dot, 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 because it pulls that paint off of the dotting tool. That's how I'm going to get the size dot that I want. Now, when I started over here, my dots were smaller and they've gotten bigger around here. And that's the size that they're staying at now. So now that we're at the top of the image where it would draw your attention, they've been fairly uniform in that bigger size. So that comes back to why I start my trims on the edge. Now I'm paranoid to put my finger. So remember, I like to rest my hand on my project. But I'm running the risk of this getting flung across the room if I do that. So right now, I'm just barely perching my fingers, my pinky on the round, and my forefinger holding the round in place so that it's not lifting. All right. Okay, right now I'm not even resting my hand on it. Which is uncomfortable to have to keep my hand suspended like that. And I may be patient, but I'm also hella lazy. So I would much prefer to be able to rest my hand. Now, keep in mind, if you had this wood round flat on the table and you didn't have it on a pedestal the way I do right now, then you wouldn't be having this problem other than spinning it around and not touching it with your finger. Okay, that's a wonky circle. That was a wonky dot. Well, lucky it's on the side. Wow, these dots are way bigger than those ones. So I'm actually now, to kind of make them all match each other, what we're going to do is as we get closer to the end of this trim, I'm going to try to make my dots a little smaller again. So that it's like a gradual weight loss. You know, just like a pound a week. Nothing too drastic. Sustainable. Okay, and also, this is an example of what we were talking about earlier. When you're completing, in this case, a trim, a circle, an image, an outline, whatever, you want to keep an eye on your spacing as you get closer. So for this one, we're going to be keeping an eye on a couple of things. First, on the size of the dot, because we do need it to get a little smaller. And second, we need to pay attention to the gap that we're leaving as we get closer. Okay. The dot's getting smaller now. So that's good. The other thing to consider here is where we've put our design. I'm hopeful yay, it didn't touch. I was a little concerned. So now you can see that even though it seemed like I had positioned this really well, you can see there's a gap up there that there's not down here. So for future reference, if you want it to be perfectly centered, then use a ruler and measure the center. I don't care for it to be perfectly centered. I just wanted it to fit, and it does. So I'm pleased. Okay, so here we are coming up on the end of the trim. I started getting big dots again, Mary. Okay, so we're going to make the dots a little smaller. And keep an eye on the gap. Because there's going to come a point where you're going to realize if you have enough room for 2 more dots or only 1. Okay, we're getting to the end now. So I think I can fit 3, possibly 4 dots in here. So we're going to start with 1. 2. Okay, definitely not 4. I'm going to fit 1 dot and I'm going to put it right in between those 2. Beautiful. Beautiful. Love it. All right, we are doing very, very well. Let's move on to the green. Okay, so our accent color is Sour Apple from Deco Art Americana. Again, you don't need to use this color. If you want to, you can totally just use your white for this part. And all we're going to do is we're going to put a dot on either side of our trim. So 1 on this side on the outside and 1 on the inside. And generally speaking, I do inside, outside, inside, outside, inside, outside. That's just the way I normally do it. It's not required, but I mean, you're here. You might as well dot along with me. Okay, so I'm going to give myself another skewer. I think that's a good size for this. And we'll get our sour apple. Now, when you're not sure what the size of your dot's going to be, use your palette for that. It's going to give you a good sense. Okay, so that's a little big. That's not too bad. Okay, we'll start. I'm a little nervous. I feel like this is a bit too big. Let's actually move to, is this bigger? That's even bigger, so definitely not you. Toothpick. The toothpick might be the one. It feels a little too small. Oh boy, I can't decide. Okay, I'm going to start with this. I'm going to start with this because who wants to watch me debate for another 45 minutes? Anybody? No? Nobody? Fine. Okay, we're going to start where we ended so that we're, again, trying to avoid touching things that are wet. Oh, that's a good size. Oh boy. I can't rest my finger like that. I'm going to try the toothpick now and see which one I like better. I think I'm going to stick with the toothpick, actually. I feel like that's a better dot. Okay, now I'm feeling very unbalanced because I can't rest my hand. So what I'm going to do is use my thumb as a perch for my finger. And hopefully that will help. Yeah, that's good. That helps keep me steady. And remember, I'm always exhaling. Okay, now I'm in a groove. And if you were to look really closely at all these dots from this trim, you'll be able to see right when I get into the groove, because the dots become more even. So once we're done this trim, we've only got a couple of steps left, and then we'll be done this guy. The first step, well, let's say there's 3 steps. Step number 1, you got to let this dry really well. I'd let it sit for at least an hour, and then we're going to erase all the guidelines using an actual regular eraser. Now, you could totally use a damp Q-tip because it is a chalk pencil. Or you could probably use the rubber on the back of the chalk pencil. I've never even tried that. It only comes with it, but I never even tried that. You'll notice that when I make a dot and I move on from it, if I think to myself, well, that came out a little small, I'll go back and redot it. Like, who's going to stop me? Not Ghostface. Tell you that. Okay, so what I was saying was the first step is going to be erasing the chalk pencil outline after this is dried for at minimum an hour, preferably a couple. Then you'll give this a good erase and get rid of all the chalk lines. And then once that's done and you're 100% sure your chalk lines are gone, because they have to be, or the next step is going to keep them there forever. The next step is we're going to seal this using varnish. Now, I like to use Liquitex varnish. This is the varnish brand that I tend to gravitate towards the most, Liquitex. You can get these at Michael's, and Amazon also has them online. And I tend to use the matte varnish because of my lighting here for these projects. But if I wasn't recording myself making this, I would probably use gloss because I like a glossy finish. But that's a judgment call or a personal preference thing. So you do you, but definitely seal it. Whether it's matte, gloss, or semi, just make sure you actually do seal it. So I will say this, if you do enjoy dot painting, I really do encourage you to invest in a pair of dotting tools. Using these household items is super convenient if you're not really sure if this is your cup of tea. But if you can see yourself, making even 4 or 5 projects, I feel like it would be worth the investment of spending the 10 or 15 bucks or whatever it is. I actually am not 100% sure how much it is right now, to buy yourself some actual dotting tools. And the reason I'm saying that is because Dotting with non-traditional tools like a toothpick and a skewer and a paintbrush absolutely can be done. We have proven that. You're watching me do it right now. But I personally find that it's harder to get the perfectly shaped round dots using a tool like this versus a dotting tool that was literally designed to do, dotting. So I would really recommend that you pick yourselves up a set of dotting tools. If you know you like doing this, it's totally worth it. Not to mention, if you're a nail girly, you can totally use your dotting tools for your nails as well. Okay, we're over halfway. Now, I will say I am kind of rushing through this today. I won't deny that I'm going faster than I would normally go if I was just by myself listening to a true crime podcast and, maybe eating some chocolate while I dot paint. I would definitely be going a bit slower. I'd be stopping more frequently to let the dots dry a bit more because it's really that simple when it comes to dot painting. If you can't fit a dot or you're scared you're going to overlap another dot and turn it into a blob, then just give it 5 minutes. None of these dots take that long to dry. I mean, at most 10 minutes. And then they'll be totally dry and you can come back and do what you got to do. I just find as I get closer to the end, I get almost faster. I get too excited. I'm just like, oh my God, the end is near. So you got to remind yourself, take a deep breath. Oh, that one came out bad. Some of these dots are so perfectly round and others are kind of like, more. And that's okay. Oh boy. We're getting to the end. I really didn't think I would be able to dot this whole thing in 2 hours. I thought I'd get about halfway and then need to pick this up again. But it's looking like we're actually going to finish this today, which is really, really good news. Because that means we can move on to making our Halloween wreath with this sign. Once it's dry and I have sealed it with varnish, oh, I overlapped my black dot with that one. That's too bad. Now, my black dot is still a bit wet. So even if I wanted to wipe that green one off, I won't. Because it'll cause me to mess up several dots just to fix one error. It's not worth it. Oh my God, this is so exciting. Oh, careful. I almost touched it with my finger. Calm down. All right, guys, we are coming into the home stretch here with our last few dots for the trim. I don't know about you, but I'm super excited. I'm sure you can tell by the tone of my voice, but if I get too excited, my hand's going to shake. Okay, last two. Here we go. Beautiful. There you have it. She's done. Isn't she pretty? We are done. Our sign is prepared and ready to go. Twinsies all the way. So in terms of next steps, we're going to let this dry for at least an hour. And then I'm going to go in with my eraser and erase all of the chalk lines. And then I'm going to let this sit for at least 24 hours. And then we're going to seal it with varnish. And the reason is, even though the paint looks dry, it might not be fully dry. And you really do want it to be like completely dry before you add your varnish. So that will complete this mask, this sign for our project, and we'll be ready to use it next week to make the Halloween wreath. So I'm going to wrap up here for today. We got a great accomplishment done. We actually finished the sign. I really wasn't expecting that. So I'm going to pick up and start working on the wreath on Friday, October 10th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please feel free to join me for that. I'm going to release a list of all of the materials I'll be using to create that wreath so that you can make my wreath along with me on Friday. I hope you come along. I'd love to see you. If you're interested in learning more about dot painting, check out my channel. I've got tons of beginner-friendly videos. And don't forget to subscribe so we can continue to get crafty together. Toodaloo, my friends.